Hey, this is Brian at Paradise Arcade Shop. Sorry, but I couldn't resist doing this outside. You might hear some background noise and some of the neighbors talking, but I thought I'd go over the anatomy of arcade locks today. So here you have the basic components of an arcade lock. You've got the lever arm here that actually latches against the door, the barrel, a washer for wooden doors or wooden appliances, the nut that holds the lock in, a lock washer for the back, the 90-degree restrictor, and the nut. Sometimes the nut will be a screw. This is what holds the whole assembly down on the back. We'll go over that in a minute. One thing that's key about most arcade locks, whether they're double bitted, which are the keys with bumps on each side, single bitted, which are the keys with a bump on one side, or the circular style lock, most arcade locks will turn 360 degrees unless you do something to restrict it. So the way we restrict it is, if you imagine the lock goes in the door this way, so on my cabinets, most people like to do their cabinets in a specific direction or with a specific orientation. All of my cabinets, I like to do the little detents from the key vertically. Don't ask me why, there's no good reason for it, but that's what I like to do. And then you have to decide if you want the key to turn to the right or to the left. The big thing there, some games only work one way or the other, but you can always kind of finagle it around. So this restrictor goes on the back, and this is what keeps the keys turning 90 degrees one way or the other. So if you look, it's just a little plate with a cutout on it so that it's got a 90-degree motion, and if you look, there's always a little tab on the lock. Once I slide this down on there, that tab prevents the key from moving more than 90 degrees. So if I turn this down, I'm stuck here, and I come back to here. Stuck here, come back to here. Now let's say that I don't want to turn to the right, I want to turn to the left. So if I come around back here, I need to remove my little plate. Just pops off, turn it around, and now if I put my key in, I will have a 90 degree to the left. So that's the first thing with a lock. Now if you're going to put a lock into a door, the first thing that you're going to do is you need a door, which we have down here on the floor, and I'll show you in a minute, but you're going to slide your barrel through. See, we'll pull it up. I grabbed an old coin door because I think some of this stuff is easier to see if I'm just, especially with the camera on a tripod, it's easier to see if I just sit here and show you by holding the door. So here we have an old door. I think this is off an Atari cabinet. I don't even know. I'm pretty sure I got this door just like this. Somebody just dropped it off one day. So if you look at this, I actually don't have the option on this one. There's two flats inside here. So I can either put my little tabs going that way or this way. So I'm going to choose this way for now, and then you just push the lock in. Now on most arcade coin doors, if you look, that will keep the lock itself from turning much. It's not perfect, but it gives it a little bit of restriction. Now if this was a wooden door, for instance, we would take this piece, and if you look, this piece is basically a washer, and it has teeth on one side. You put the teeth down against the wood, slide it down, and then we'd put the nut on. But since this isn't a wood door, we don't need this guy, it's just extra. So in our case, we can add on our nut here. So we spin this down, and this is one of the things that always stinks about doing locks, is it just takes forever to screw these nuts on. What comes in really handy is if you get a deep weld 7/8 socket, you can spin them down, you can take them off. This is a really handy tool to have around when you're changing locks. I usually keep one in my box of locks so that it's just easy to grab it and go, and you can swap game locks out much quicker. Not as important when you're putting the locks on because they spin down well, but when you take these off. Now, you don't have to crank this down. I mean, you can obviously fit a huge driver on here. Usually I just like to go kind of hand tight. The reason for that is these tend to seize up over time. So these nuts will grab. Now if you want to do it tighter, you can do it a little tighter, but you just got to be careful because you can strip this with such a big socket. Next up, we talked about the restrictor. So do I want it to open to the right or the left? And this is one of the things where, remember, the flats are on here. You fit them onto the little post in the back. So right now I've got it set up so that the key is going to turn this way. Okay? Now that's going to be open, because with these particular style locks, they don't release the key in any position other than one position. So that will be locked, because obviously when it's locked I want to take my keys away. But then if I turn it, the key stays in here. This is, some people like this, some people don't. This prevents loss of the keys. But this is a 90 degree to the right. Now let's say I want to do it to the left. Again, we just take this off, flip it over, and now we have a 90 degree to the left. This little restrictor is really important, because if you don't have this on there, you don't have any control over how far your key is turning. So let's take this key out for now. And now we've got our little lever arm here. Now we got to decide which way we're going to do this. So if my key is out, right, the key is out of the lock, that means we're in a locked position. In order to be in a locked position, that means the lever arm has to be coming across the frame. So it has to look like this. Does that make sense? If the key is out and we're locked, and the key is out and it's like this, then the door is unlocked, and you can only take the key out when the door is unlocked. So if you look at this, this would be locked, key comes out, I stick the key in, it moves the lever arm, and it doesn't come out now. Lock the door again, key comes out. So what's next is pretty simple. You put your little lock washer on top. Now some locks will come with a bolt, some will come with some will come with a nut, some will come with a little screw. There's a bunch of different ways of holding this assembly down, but basically they're all the same. You just put something on the back that holds the assembly down in place. Now our locks in particular come with a 7/16. So this is 7/8, this is 7/16 bolt nut. You just tighten that down on there. This nut you can put a little bit more torque on. Now one of the things to remember is all of this has a little bit of play, right? I mean, you can move it around a little bit and tighten it down. So all of these things will move a very little bit. If you want your door to fit tighter, you can push this lever into the frame by pushing it this way. If it hits stuff, you can pull it back. One thing you need to pay attention to when you are doing this is some games will have very specific directions that this can turn. And so in some games there might be a block against it going up. So you might have a block against a left turning key, and you might need to do a right turning key. And the opposite happens in other games. So if you look at this now, this is a fully installed lock. So if we come over here, it's locked, but I can take the key out. So in order to get the tab out of the way, we unlock it, and we're good to go. There we go. Now, this happens to be, you can see, a 1/4 inch long. I installed a slightly longer lock into this door because that's what I had sitting on the shelf. But let's say I did this in a game, and this is not exactly the best technique, but let's say I did this and I wanted this to fit anyways, and this was the only lock I had in. What you can do is you can bend these tabs down. And you can do it by hand, you can grab a wrench and do it. Let me pull this out. So if you see, I now bent the tab down. Now there obviously has to be room behind the lock for this to work. But if we go on up here, you can see how it's now gotten closer to the cabinet. You know, we can keep working this down as long as you have room there. Now one of the things I'm noticing is that this assembly is loose, meaning that I didn't tighten this up enough. One thing to remember, this is kind of something I learned somewhat by accident, but if you have the keys in a lock and you go to tighten either the screw or the nut down on the back, you're going to keep spinning it. So take the keys out, because the lock locks without the keys in there. So you really want to have it set up like that. So this is pretty tight now. We'll give this a good pull down. That's quite a bit more. Let's see how we did. Not bad. I mean, you could tighten that up a little bit, which I probably would. Actually, I would have just installed a shorter lock if I was going to do this door, but this will work fine if it's all you got on the shelf. So key things to remember here are when you're installing a lock, make sure that your little 90-degree rotation plate is installed properly. If you're having problems with the lock, that's usually one thing to look at. Make sure that it's going the right way. If you're trying to turn the key and it won't open or it won't close. The other thing is make sure if you have a key like this that stays in the lock in one position, that's the position that the door is open. Otherwise, you're going to be walking around with a lot of keys and unlocked doors, and then the only way you're going to be able to lock the door is to put the key in it, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and leave it there. That's it for now. If you have any questions, please let us know. Once again, this is Brian with Paradise Arcade Shop. Thank you.